Hello, and welcome back to Mirror's Signal podcast, your weekly podcast sponsored by Knowledgeably Instructor Training, award winning CPD providers. Stay tuned to the episode to get your discount code from them. Today's episode, we are joined by Jackie and Penny from Driving Mobility. And today's episode is how you get into that line of work, teaching learners with additional needs and disabilities, but also about the research project that Driving Mobility are currently doing to see what some of the challenges and obstacles are of driving instructors getting into that line of work. So have a listen to the episode, and I will leave the link to the research project in the description. And it would really help if you could head onto that link and just fill in the survey on there, so they can get as much information as possible from the point of view of driving instructors, and it will help them moving forward with their next steps. So, a really interesting episode, and then a chat with Penny at the end to find out a little more about the job and what it is she does. So, if you're enjoying these episodes, make sure that you hit subscribe, like, or follow wherever you're watching or listening. And you can find more information from me or about the show. And that is on the Facebook page or in the Facebook group. And they're both available at Mirror's Signal Podcast. So head over there, check it out, and make sure you go to the link in the description and fill in the relevant survey on there. For now, we will get on with the episode. I hope you all enjoy. Jackie, Penny, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having us, Josh.
Yeah, thanks very much, Josh, once again.
That's all right. It's great to have you, and Penny, great to see you again. It's been a little while since our last episode,
Yes.
and I guess a similar theme tonight as well. Motability and how we can help, or what's needed of us as driving instructors. Can we get straight in and talk about that?
Yes.
We certainly can. Yes. Shall I kick off with that?
Why not, Jackie?
Yeah, I mean, I've put some posts out, but it'd be good to hear what you're doing, Jackie, and what we can do about it on kind
Sure.
of our side.
Okay. So I'd just say first off, I'm not an ADI. I've worked with ADIs for the last 10 years very closely as co-assessors because I actually work for East Anglian Drivability, who are part of Driving Mobility. And I know Penny's had some conversations with you with some of the previous podcasts about how all that works. I have done a bit of project management in the past, and I think that's probably why I was asked if I would lead on this. And also the fact that I'm coming into it, I'm quite happy to ask questions because there's a lot I don't know about your industry. So, and I'm learning very quickly. So I think that's partly why I was asked to do it. But essentially, Motability Foundation have funded a project that Driving Mobility are running on, and it's a research project on trying to get to the bottom of why people don't go into the disability tuition sector. And if they do, what some of the challenges are for them to work in that sector. And I think over the years, it has, I'm sure you've heard, Josh, I know Penny has heard and has had experience herself, that there are concerns as to where you get the right sort of training to work with people living with various health conditions, disabilities, whether that be the challenges that that person lives with and the way that they may learn, or it may be the equipment they need. So one of the things that has been talked about is where do we go for training? What sort of training is needed? And continued support and mentoring, that all comes into the continued learning, because not one size, as I'm sure you know, doesn't fit all, and you'll come across new situations, and it's being able to have somebody with more experience that can you can talk to, who can guide you. But we've also had over the years people saying, I would like to go into this field, but the cost of adaptations is incredibly expensive to set it up. And particularly if people are, in a franchise and got a lease car and they're having to change regularly. So it's been talked about with the Disability Drivers Association over the years. John Rogers, who I'm sure many of you both know, has talked about this. And for the first time, I think we've got the opportunity to say, well, do you know what? We're going to talk to people and we're going to put pen to paper as to what are the issues and challenges. And already, we don't want to make any assumptions. So we're asking, sort of what are some of the concerns? What's made it difficult? Why have you gone into this area, or why haven't you gone into this area to work? And the opportunity to give a whole range of reasons as to what the challenges are. So although, as I say, we know what a few of them are, we're not making any assumptions, and we give the opportunity for people to comment on other aspects. For example, I think somebody put down, I would like to do this, but I'm concerned that if I've got adaptations on a vehicle, I'm not going to be able to work with the standard learner because it'll interfere with it. So there's whatever questions, nothing's too silly to say that that's the reason that put them off. And so, yes, so this is a research project looking at that. And it started off really with trying to define, which has been quite difficult, what disability, disability driving instructors would cover. Because really, I think traditionally people think about those who've got a physical disability and need the car adapted. But of course, we know many driving instructors like yourselves are actually working with a whole range of people, particularly youngsters with neurodiversity, who again, there's maybe a different way of working with them, that you need to understand how that affects people and to give people the best opportunity. Those who've got hearing loss. We've also got older people who have lost confidence. They haven't driven for a while, or maybe their partner, their husband has been the driver. They haven't driven for a long while. Husband sadly passes away, and suddenly the wife is left saying, well, actually, there's a lot busier on the roads. I am a license holder, but I've lost confidence. So there's that side of things as well. So it's and then of course there's all the hidden disabilities. So it's actually quite difficult to define what disability is. And some people don't see themselves as having a disability, but they might have additional needs. So, again, we mustn't presume with anything, but we're trying to open up and say those driving instructors who are working with people with hidden disabilities, with obvious disabilities, with health conditions, with additional needs, please fill in this survey A or questionnaire A, which is around, if you're delivering that, what are the challenges? Was it, how long do people wait? How far do they have to travel? Those kind of things. And then if you're not working with anybody like that, fill in the other one, because we want to hear why you haven't gone into that area. It may well be it's not an area of interest, which is fine because it's not for everybody. But interestingly, we've had around sort of 200 replies from people who don't consider, they're working in that field at the moment, but are interested in it and would like to, but are concerned about how much it's going to cost, where they're going to get the knowledge from, etc. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I do have some questions on kind of what you spoke about there, and I'm not sure where we're going to go with this, but if we look at the other side, so if we have these learners with disabilities or additional needs, is there generally one place that they will go to get the support, or do they fall into the same position as everyday learners where they're just on Google and Facebook and just ringing around local driving instructors? How does it work from the pupil's point of view?
Well, I'm guessing, Penny will add in for this, as a driving instructor, but essentially a lot of people will probably just be ringing around, and then by chance, they may come across the Disability Driving Instructors Association, who will actually be able to match them with somebody in their geographical area. That if they come along for an assessment at one of the driving mobility centres, then yes, they will be directed through that way as to who is in their area, and also the Disability Driving Instructors Association. But I would imagine because we know sometimes people try and buy bits and pieces off the internet and think, oh, that'll solve my problem, I'll buy that adaptation. Now, I'm guessing those people are, going to just be ringing around and saying, is there anybody who can teach me this? Because as I understand it, and correct me, both of you, if I'm wrong, but that it isn't clear the pathway that somebody needs to take to actually find out where, there is somebody who's got this knowledge or the equipment to actually do the tuition. I don't know what your thoughts are, Penny, on that.
Yeah, I think just what you said, disability driving instructors, their website is best place for people to go, because they've got a list of people in different areas. There's lots of pockets of places where people don't have the opportunity to learn to drive because there's no instructors available. That's the hardest bit. So I'm on my area for disability driving instructors on their website, but I haven't got an adapted vehicle. So what I do is then forward them on to East Anglian Drivability and say, well, if you can book through them, I'll be able to teach you on this day. But most of the time they want daytime, and because I'm working full time now, I'm not available for them. So it's really difficult for people to
So
find.
that is just one avenue, but I think it goes back to
Yeah.
your point, Josh, that, the question, it's not clear. It seems to be word of mouth by talking to a driving instructor who says, oh, I know somebody in your area who might be able to help. And even if they can't, then they might pass you on to somebody else. So that's certainly something that's coming out of the survey. And we know anecdotally that there is a lack of those with specialist equipment, particularly within the regions. But just going back to your point about sort of learners, obviously a lot of the people we're looking at aren't necessarily learners, they're already license holders. Somebody maybe who's had a stroke survivor that's left them with weakness down one side, or the inability to use, sort of their right leg, for example, to operate the accelerator. They'll know the rules of the road and what have you, but they need to learn a very different technique for driving. And although we'll do the assessment at the driving centres to look at, has that person got the cognitive ability? Because you'll know with having had a stroke, it is affecting the brain, and it's the brain that stops, sort of the arm, the leg, the body, the speech working properly. But it also can affect, and many times, people's concentration, their ability to make decisions, to make those decisions quickly enough, to be able to divide your attention, which obviously when you're driving, there's a huge amount going on that your brain is processing to tell your body what to do. And as you come off the accelerator to slow, because the car in front, for example, it's the lights, your brake lights are on, and you're thinking, right, what's happening? I need to slow down a bit. Obviously, you're coming off the accelerator, but are you just coming up gently? Are you taking your foot fully off? Are you braking? Are you, there's lots that you're processing in a split second. And if you've been affected cognitively, you may not have, depending how your recovery has gone, particularly some people come to us too early in the recovery, that they may not be at the stage they're ready, or they may be further down the line, but actually, like they would practice other things that get them back being able to manage those day-to-day life skills, they might need to be practicing something like that as well, which is what we kind of call rehab tuition. So it's vast, this area. It really is.
With the instructing side of it, then, are there different avenues that an instructor can take? I know we've spoke about it, Penny, in previous episodes, but is there work for driving instructors almost on an employed basis to do assessments? Are you wanting driving instructors like myself to get an adapted car, get some training, and offer the tuition, where's the need and how do we fulfill that need as driving instructors?
I think this is what the survey is about. The research is finding out. And again, the assessors at the moment, there seem to be generally, there's vacancies obviously come up, but the biggest problem is not so much getting assessors at the centres, it's actually being able to get the tuition. Once the assessors have actually said, this is how this person will need to drive in future, they're obviously going to need to have some lessons, because for many of them, it's a very different way of driving, particularly, as I say, if we're looking at the adaptations. And I know we're focusing on that, but we've got to remember sometimes it's about strategies that people are using. But if we take, because it's more tangible, the adaptation side of things, people can be waiting 6 months, a year, for somebody, because their list is so long and they cover such a large geographical area. And obviously that's not, acceptable really at the end of the day. If people have got a need, it needs to be met, as soon as possible. So there's the time scale and there's also the distance. I mean, people are often having to travel for an hour or more to get to somebody who's actually has got that knowledge or the equipment. So correct me if I'm wrong, Penny, but I think, as I say, the reason that this survey, we're doing this, is that we're very aware, those of us that work in the industry, that there are not enough instructors out there doing the tuition.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting the people. We have an abundance of people that we see as assessors that need the tuition afterwards, but there's nobody to give that tuition. So these poor people know what they need, but they're stuck because they don't know how to use what they need.
Is the tuition funded? So I'm trying to look at this from a driving instructor and selfishly a business point of view, because we're here to
Obviously,
build a
yeah.
business. And is it funded tuition? Is it like, if someone comes to me, do I say my prices are X amount per hour?
Yeah.
And they come on to my books like a normal student, or
Yeah.
is it funded and there's a cap? How does that side of it work?
So there's two ways. It's you would be charging your normal rate for any other lesson. There's no difference. You can't discriminate, so the price has to be the same for whoever you're teaching in an automatic vehicle. So, and a lot of instructors I do charge slightly more for an automatic vehicle, but if I had anybody else, it'd be exactly the same, depending on whether it's just a standard auto or with a push-pull, for example.
So again, Penny, at the moment we're focusing on adaptations
Yeah.
rather than other health needs, which is,
Yeah.
I say, with the survey, obviously we're looking at anything that
everything.
comes under
Yeah.
disability.
Yeah, but again, it's because
at the
it's that
moment.
tangible thing that you can see,
Yeah.
isn't it? And you can visualize. Motability do funding as well. So if they're eligible for the funding, they can get a grant towards the familiarization lessons. I don't know a great deal about that because I've not been involved with it, but I know there is that funding available for some people, but it's not available to all.
No, because again, Motability and the way that works, it's a charity. But as I say, there are certain criteria that people have to meet before they're eligible for Motability vehicle with adaptations. But then if they are potentially, then there will be a certain amount of funding for the lessons. But again, we see a lot of people who aren't eligible or have decided not to use their Motability, that they're sort of personal independence allowance for a vehicle, and are looking to fund privately. So I think the thing is, there's a whole range, but as the key thing as a driving instructor, I guess, is to know that, as Penny said, you will charge what you usually charge for a lesson. I know that if you're having to travel, I understand that you can charge traveling
travel time.
travel time, but as I say, it would be discriminatory to be charging somebody with any sort of health condition or disability different to the rest of what your pupils, your standard pupils are being charged. And prices will vary a bit between driving instructors, but you already know what your pricing structures are. Yeah.
So what I'll do with the survey, because we've mentioned that, and I guess this is what you're here for, you want more people filling in that survey.
Please, yes.
So I'm going to leave the survey in the description. I'll leave the link in the description so people can find it. But if people want more information and they are almost considering this line of work, where would you guide those people for first up training? So whether that's familiarization training or whether that's a course of some description, and then get in the vehicle and get in the adaptations. Where do we go? Where do we start? Where do I get this info?
In a nutshell, that's where the problem lies, which is why we want the evidence around it, because it's very hit and miss at the moment as to, sort of where the training is. I mean, there are a number of organisations and individuals that offer training. You can Google it. Certainly, Driving Mobility, the Disability Driving Instructors Association will deliver some training, and there are a whole range of other people out there who also do that, but it's not really at the moment, as I understand it, it's not coordinated. None of it is accredited as such, so that, without upsetting anybody can set up, I understand, to deliver training, which is great. And there are a lot of people out there who've got a lot of knowledge, and we need those people. But they're probably, from what I've heard and what's coming back on the questionnaires we've had so far, is the comment that we don't know where to go. We've been on some training that was good. We've been on some training that really wasn't of any use. It's all very sort of bitty. So that, and it's the same, to be honest with you, about getting sort of adaptations fitted. Some people will say to you, oh, if you go to a certain company, you might find you get a reduction. There should be some sort of coordinated approach to this. And at the moment, there isn't, in the way that it sounds like there needs to be. Certainly, and you'll know, as sort of, when you had your pink ticket, did anybody ever talk to you about that was a sector that you could go into? And here's some training that place courses. I understand that's never mentioned, and people
There's
find
lots
it
that's
really,
never mentioned.
yeah, absolutely. So I think from what I'm hearing is that driving instructors are saying, actually, I spoke to somebody who does work with doing sort of disability specialist tuition. It sounds really interesting, and I asked them who they were trained by and how they got the equipment. So it is a bit of a scattergun approach, really. And that's why we want to hear from people who are doing it as to what were the challenges, what were the difficulties, what do you need to work in this sector, and those who aren't but are maybe thinking about it, why haven't you pursued it? A lot of people are already saying, well, I didn't feel I had the knowledge or expertise to work, and I didn't know where to go to get that information. So there isn't an easy answer to that at the moment. I think the two key organisations, I guess, who do sort of try and see across the country what's going on across the UK. Our Driving Mobility would probably be able to advise, what's going on out there, as well as the disability driving instructors. But that is just two organisations, and I'm very aware there are a lot of individuals delivering training, and it needs a coordinated approach, I would suggest. But I'm jumping the gun a little bit in that we haven't got all the research and the information back, but that's just where I am so far with what I'm picking up.
Yeah, so as instructors as well, Motability refer people to BSM, I believe, isn't that correct? And then they will
AA and
suggest,
BSM are who
yeah,
they
yeah,
have, yes.
yeah. They suggest a driving instructor that they have. So it's their, I don't know who they use to train their instructors.
No, well, this again was something that we're looking at within all of this. So the questions you've got, Josh, don't necessarily have answers to, but I'm hoping once we piece all this together, maybe I can come back and talk to you about what we found with the research and how it's going to be taken forward, because potentially this is just phase one of a three-phase project where the second phase is to actually develop what is needed to address the gaps and the challenges, and the third stage is for it to be put into place. Now, whether or not we at Driving Mobility get the following stages of this sort of proposal, I guess some depends on how well the first stage goes in reality. But as I say, I know to date they're very pleased with the quality of the responses we're getting and the number of responses. But as I say, the more we can hear from people, the more people who can fill this in and make comment, the stronger the argument is, you know, particularly as there are certain themes that come through, that this is what needs addressing in the industry, so that those who want to work in the, you know, sort of specialist disability tuition sector, which, as I say, is everything from hidden disabilities, you know, neurodiversity, hearing loss, confidence for older drivers, adaptations, even high-tech vehicles that you operate with joysticks, for example. It's such a huge range, but anybody who wants to go into that knows where they need to go to get the knowledge, to get the support, to get the training, etc. I think that's what we're hoping this will achieve. It's a big ask, but you know, we've got to start somewhere.
Makes sense. And I guess the questions that I'm asking are what people that are watching, listening, or have seen the survey might be thinking to themselves anyway. But it now makes sense what this survey is about and how important it is. It's that we don't have the answers, but we need somewhere to start. We need numbers filling in this survey so that things can be put into place to make it more accessible for driving instructors to head down this path, but
Absolutely.
also for learners to
For the
have
end user,
a
yes.
point. Yeah.
I mean, we haven't talked about that, you know, but at the end of the day, this is all about making a difference for people living with a range of health conditions who've got additional needs to be able to drive, you know. And as I say, there are, I'm sure, a lot of driving instructors who would like to do more around that. So it is pulling it all together to make a difference for people out there. Definitely. So yes, fill in the questionnaires.
We will get the links in the description on whatever you're watching or listening. Get the link from the description. Don't finish watching the episode, fill it in, and then come back to the episode and we'll finish up with where we're going from here.
Brilliant.
But yeah, hopefully we can get some more eyes on. And I know people that are listening and watching, I guess a lot of my audience as well, are always looking for another challenge and more development. So if this is something that's maybe at the start of forming a path of qualification and a point of contact for people, then it's going to be great. And like you say, it's the end user. It's those people that need to get on the road.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily 17-year-olds. They're
No.
potentially older people that have got relatives that rely on them driving.
Yes, absolutely. One other thing I was just going to say, Josh, is that one or two people have said I've kind of seen one or two people with sort of, you know, living with neurodiversity, or I did once see somebody where I did some adaptations with them, but I don't class myself as a specialist. Should I fill in which of the questionnaires should I fill in? And it's not about seeing yourself as a specialist, it's about having done some work in the specialist area. So ideally, even if you've only done a little bit, fill in the one that says, you know, you're working in this specialist area. Having said that, just, if you're not sure, then, you would rather fill in the other one, then do, because we can still pick some bits up. But it isn't about saying, oh, I see myself as a specialist in this area, so that's why I'm going to do it. It's anybody who's started to do some work with specialist tuition, however diverse that may be.
I filled in the wrong one. So many
It's
of
not,
my learners are neurodiverse. There's
it's
more
not a
neurodiverse than
problem.
not.
And I think it comes back to how we define what we mean by specialist tuition. And it's very difficult to do that because there are so many things that can affect driving with, as I say, health conditions or even the aging process, can affect. And we must be careful not to label people. Everybody's individual, so it's very difficult to give that description. To be honest with you, we have struggled with that, which is why we just tried to give some examples of hearing loss, those living with neurodiversity, those who've got sort of physical changes, maybe they've lost a limb and what have you. But don't worry too much if you've done the wrong one, because there are still questions that will pick up some of the things we need within that. So, but I just thought I'd try and clarify that a little bit. I might have confused everybody more, but
Just fill in one of them. Just fill some stuff in so
absolutely.
they can get some data.
Thank you, Josh.
No problem at all. Do you have any final messages, Jackie? I know you've got to get away and we're going to have a catch up with Penny, but is there anything else you'd like to share before you do?
No, just to say that I really, really value, there's been a number of people who filled them in. It's been excellent with what people have filled in. We've also asked if people would be happy to be interviewed individually or be part of a focus group. And I'm bowled over by the number of people who are saying, yes, we would like to. So I think there's a real interest and passion for this. So a big thank you to everybody who's already filled it in. But as I say, and the big ask for anybody who doesn't. I think they're my final messages. And I'm very happy to come back when we have completed it and got the results and share that with you if you feel that would be appropriate.
Absolutely. Please do. As soon as you got any information or anything that needs to go out, yeah, you're welcome back on and we'll give the listeners an update as to where you're at and what to look for coming next.
Brilliant. Thank you very much and have a good
No
evening.
worries. Thank you,
Take
Hi,
care.
Jackie.
Jackie.
Bye.
So before we get on to the rest of the chat with Penny, here is your discount code from our sponsors, Knowledgeably Instructor Training. Just use the discount code MSP10 for 10% off their client-centered learning Part 3 Standards Check award-winning workshop. So that is MSP10 for 10% off. So, Penny, with all of that in mind that we've just been through, you're a driving instructor with first-hand experience of this line of work. I guess my first question is, how do you find it and what is it you do?
Good question. So the actual teaching with the adaptations, I enjoy that because it is different. You need to know how to use them. That's so important. So you can't just go and get them in your car and start teaching them. You want to know what you're doing with them. A lot of the time, especially if it's somebody that's usually driven a manual vehicle and they've lost it, so they've lost the use of their right leg. Yeah, so they're used to using their left foot for the clutch pedal. So the clutch pedal goes down quickly and it tends to come up slowly. So I'll take the woman that we had. It was an assessment, it wasn't a lesson. So it was the first ever time of driving an adapted vehicle. She'd lost very, very weak on her right leg. So she's always driven a manual vehicle. So we put her in a left foot accelerator to start with because that was her choice. And the first thing she does, gas accelerator right to the floor. So there's me foot straight on the brake so that we don't go onto the curb and across the road. Those sort of things happen quite regularly. especially if they've been in a manual and they're going to a left foot accelerator. So when they come, so if you've got somebody that's not had an assessment, they've lost the use of their right limb and they've decided they want a left foot accelerator, they get it fitted to their car, which they can do without any assessment of any description. They can go to a Motability place, or a car adaptation place. They will fit the left foot accelerator for them. Then they think they can just go out and drive it. It's not as easy as that. They need that assessment to make sure that they're going to be capable of learning and changing the way they're driving with that adaptation. So after this lady had tried the left foot accelerator, we went on to the push-pull hand controls. No problem at all. It was so much easier for her because she didn't have to think about her legs at all. So it's like just straight to the hand controls. And she picked that up really quite quickly. She obviously needs to go and have some lessons and some familiarization tuition for it so that she's more capable and confident in using it before she can go out on the road on go out on the road on her own. She'll also need to come back for a second assessment just to make sure that she is safe. But when you're teaching somebody, you've got to think about all those things as well. So the hard bit's been done. They've been to the assessor. They said, yes, this is what they need. So then they go to the instructor that gives the lessons. So the instructor needs to know how the adaptation works so they can give advice, because they might be using so if it's a push-pull hand control, so with lever, you push for the brake, pull for the accelerator. So if they're holding their arm up all the time, you see my arm, holding their arm up and pushing and pulling, their arm's going to start aching, it's going to start hurting. So it's making sure that they have found a comfortable position for them to use that adaptation. And it's the way, when they're pulling it, are they hooking their thumb over the steering wheel, or are they just holding the handle itself and just using their full arm? All those sort of things they need to work out which is right for them. So that's where knowing how to use the adaptation is essential.
So we spoke about it briefly, and for our listeners that might now be interested in this line of work, take me for example. Let's pretend I've got an automatic car. What would be my next step?
Next step would be going along to your local driving mobility centre and asking them if there's anyone that can help you or show you how to use the adaptations, because you want to get your car adapted and help other people drive with that adaptation. And I'm sure most of the mobility centres would help and would take you out and show you what to do, give you advice. I know we certainly do. We quite often have people shadowing us so that they can see what goes on in the assessments and then go and have a play with the car. There's also disability driving instructors group run by John Rogers that's got all the information on there, I believe, of the courses that they run. So they do like neurodiversity course, talk a lot about ADHD, autism, disabilities, cover quite a lot of information, but it's very compact information. So there's an awful lot of information being given to you in a short amount of time. But at the end of their course, they do a full day where you go and you try all the adaptations. So that course is quite useful. I've done that course. And I've done it after, because I was already working at driving mobility, so I've done it after starting that. So even I learned quite a bit from there. So it's definitely worth, if this is the sort of thing you want to do, it's worth going along to their course, run on Zoom, and then they've got a day at the Regional Driving Assessment Centre in Solihull. I think Driving Mobility occasionally run a course, which is also about using adaptations. I haven't been on that one, even though I work under the umbrella of Driving Mobility. I haven't actually done that course, so I couldn't tell you too much about it. There's not enough training for people. I'd be happy to help somebody. So if, say, you wanted some tuition, you wanted to get your car adapted, I'd be more than happy to come along, give you some tuition, show you how to use it, and let you loose. Because it's just about understanding how it works. But then you've got the choice of like, what adaptation are you going to use? What are you going to get fitted to your car? So the most common is push-pull hand control and the left foot accelerator. So the left foot accelerator will flip up, and then you flip the right foot down. So you drive it as a standard automatic vehicle, or have it as a left foot accelerator, or you can flip both the accelerators up so they're out the way so you don't accidentally hit them, and use push-pull hand controls. So it's not like you've got these adaptations on your car and you can't drive it as a standard vehicle. You can always drive it as a standard vehicle. Unless it's a wheelchair accessible vehicle, then they may not have a seat there. Don't know if I answered the question, but
Yeah, definitely. And I was just about to ask, is this with the adaptations, do you need to go out and get everything? Or is it you generally see a progressive, you'll get the basics. So like you said, a left foot accelerator, push pull hand controls, and then as you become more of like the specialist in that field, I guess you then start getting more unique adaptations to help a wider range of people.
correct, yeah. So if you're starting up, I'd strongly suggest push-pull hand controls, or even just a left foot accelerator to start with. Push-pull hand controls are the most recommended by driving mobility centres, because one, they're the cheapest adaptation, the easiest adaptation to be put onto the car. So they're all mechanical. They don't need any wiring or anything in. So apart from the indicator switch. They're quite standardized fitments so that they can be put in most cars. And to be fair, most of the people we see, it's left-sided weakness more than right-sided weakness. Saying that, we had 3 on the trot that had right-sided weakness, so they couldn't use push-pull hand controls. But there are controls that you can use on the right side, on the left side. However, we don't have any East Anglian drivability, so we can't take them out in anything. But then we've got over-rings and under-rings. So an over-ring sits on top of the steering wheel, and under-ring goes underneath the steering wheel. So the over-ring can be dismantled and taken off. The under-ring can't, it's in fixing position. So it depends on the dexterity in the hands on whether that would work. But that's quite, I think that takes more of an art to get used to than something like the push-pull. With the push-pull, you'd have the steering ball. So you're steering with the steering ball while you've got your other hands on the push-pull controls. Might also have a Wi-Fi enabled steering, what we call a steering spinner. So that's got all the buttons for all your ancillary controls. So your wipers, your lights, your horn, and everything else you might want added to it. They go from 5 buttons to 12, 15 buttons, something like that. I can't remember how many buttons, but there's quite a few different buttons you can have on it. But then you've got to learn what all the buttons for and learn the position of all the buttons. So it's not just really straightforward. But obviously, the cost of those is considerably more than if you're using the standard steering ball.
Is there a number of different companies that offer this kind of stuff? Because if anyone that's listening or watching is anything like me, if they're interested in this line of work, they'll be like, well, how much is this going to cost? Where would we go to, I don't know, have a look at these adaptations? Is there a website?
Yeah,
Can you buy it
so
like Amazon? I don't know.
I
Where
wouldn't
do you go
suggest
to get them?
Amazon. So the adaptation companies, so there's Veigle, Veigel, Veigle or Viegel, can't remember how to spell it. Our good friend Kev Lyons is getting his vehicle adapted through Veigle. I think he said something like £250 plus VAT for he's having a left-sided push-pull lever, so that's floor mounted. The reason he's gone for that because when you have a push-pull hand control fitted, you can't change the steering column in any way, it's fixed. And he didn't want that to happen, so he's gone for the left-sided one. There's Brigade. Beaver, so the Bever. Who else? There's loads of them. There is lots of them. Can't remember half of them though. But there's some of the bigger companies. There's some companies that do special offers for driving instructors. So if you go on their website, they do have a driving instructor tab that you can click on the tab and they have a special offer. But it's always worth giving them all a bell and saying like, I'm a driving instructor, I'm looking for thinking about adaptations. What can you offer me? And go from there. But most people would start with the basics and then add them on because it is expensive. It's not cheap. When I first got my Volvo, I was quoted £6,000 to get what I wanted. It's still not done.
That is often my thought. I know now that it's not the case because I have been speaking to John Rogers and a few bits because there's no one in my area. And my initial thought when people talk about adapted cars is that thousands of pounds. And for me, I drive a manual, so my next car may or may not be an automatic. I don't know, but I ain't getting rid of this one until it dies. But that's my thought. It's like you've got to buy a car. Cars these days are not cheap. And then you're thinking, well, it's going to cost me 6 grand. But I now know that's not necessarily the case for the
Yeah.
basic, like you've just said, Kev. If you've not seen, check out his episode he's been on before. But Kev has got some adaptations for, well, just under 300 quid. Well, 300 quid
Yeah,
with VAT included.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah, so there are offers out there, so it's worth ringing around, finding out who's got what adaptation that will suit you as the driving instructor. Because I was wanting either an underring or an overring, and the same as Kev with the left-handed or the left-sided push pull. But and I needed at the time I needed a dual brake fitted. But they just wanted the dual brake alone was going to cost me £1,200. So I thought that's quite a lot of money from that company. I'm not going to go for anything. And it's just time to have it because I'm now full-time at East Anglian Drivability. I don't have the spare time at the moment to take anybody else on. So I'm not doing the adaptations on my car because it's going to be a waste of money for me at this point in time. But once I've actually got rid of my learners, which I've slowly dissipating, either to my PDIs or passing their tests, once I haven't got any learners left, then I may think about getting my car done and then just moving on to the disability side of things.
Hearing the price, and I mean, £300 is a lot of money, but it's investing in your business as well, isn't it? So if I had an automatic car, I would be inclined, especially it's coming to the end of the tax year now.
That's
Let's
it, yeah.
get some stuff bought. So people with an automatic car that are currently teaching an automatic car, hopefully that's just a bit of an insight into you're potentially not looking at a £6 bill unless you're going massively specialist. And I guess the car that you've got probably makes a difference to the cost as well for
It does
different
a lot,
parts.
yeah.
But it's not what I was expecting, like a few £100 to help someone who can't get the help anywhere else that needs the experience in the car. And there is a need for it. I know because I'm now listed on one of the websites and there's no one in my area. So if I did have an adapted car, I expect that I would have a fairly full diary. I mean, I don't know, don't be
Quite
quoting
quickly.
me on this if anyone's listening. Right, Josh, I've got no work. Well, sorry. Um, but it opens up so many more avenues of work. And in most areas, you're probably going to be the only person doing it. And we know
Yeah,
this backlog of learners, the backlog of learners is going
this
to
is
ease off. It's starting to ease now. And maybe it's worth looking to diversify your business.
that's it, yeah. Think about the automatic vehicles and the automatic side, because that's the way things are. Everyone's saying that's the way things are going. So if you're going to get an automatic vehicle, think about getting adaptations as well. Push pull or a left foot accelerator. It's not going to put that much more value. Costs. I mean, that's not going to give you that much more cost on top of the new car, but you're going to reap the rewards for it, most definitely.
So there's an incentive there for people. And I can see the rewarding side of this as well, because yes, teaching our learners, our 17-year-olds, and getting them through the test. But when you're looking at, I guess it's a different age demographic that you're helping
Well,
with these
yeah, it's
adaptations.
completely varied. So you get your youngsters that have got an illness, maybe cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, had a stroke. Just saw a young lady, I think she was 20. Yeah, she was 20 when she first come to us. She'd had a stroke. And so then she had a full right-sided weakness. So there's lots of people out there from all ages that need this help. And again, it's not just, as Jackie was saying, it's not just the disabilities and the hand controls and everything. It's the rehabilitation lessons that are so needed as well. The older people, they'll phone up and say, have you got any lessons available? But they don't think to say, look, I need a couple of refresher lessons, or I need some familiarization lessons, because they've been driving a manual all their life and they now need an automatic. Because when you're older, it's not that easy just to go from a manual to automatic. So if people do phone you and they are older and they're wanting these sort of lessons, it's only going to be 4 to 6 hours. Some of them might need a little bit longer, but the maximum usually is, I suppose, around 10 hours, because they know how to drive. They know what they're doing. They just need help to either brush up on a few skills or help to, as I said, to change in from the manual to the automatic. When with an older driver, you don't want to teach them like you would a standard 17-year-old. You want to work with them. You want to coach them basically into being able to thinking a little bit more deeply about what they're actually doing. Because a lot of older drivers, as we probably know, don't use mirrors very often. So it's getting them to understand how important it is to know what's going on around them, not just in front of them. Just those sort of things that they need brushing up on. But there's some right characters as well. So you're missing out if you don't take them on.
You can see the need, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And if you haven't already, please check out the link, fill in the survey for them so they can get the data. But do you have any final messages? I do have a question that has come in from one of the listeners. But before we move on to that, do you have any final messages or anything else that you would like to share?
Just reiterate what Jackie was saying. It doesn't matter whether you're an ADI, even a PDI. Fill in the survey. It doesn't take very long. Josh will tell you, it doesn't take very long. Fill in either of them. Don't worry if it's the wrong one. Just do it. Yeah. That's my final thing out of this. This is what we need. We need to get everybody filling it in so that we've got the numbers to say, look, we need this. We need this project to go further. If we don't get the people filling in the survey, we're not going to get the funding to do the next progression. So just fill it in.
I will get it shared. So what I'd like to go to now is one of our listeners' questions. So I'm going to load this up. So these are directed to you, Penny. But what we've got is Stefan has asked, what would you recommend to someone who has never taught a learner with a disability and would consider getting into this field?
I think we've answered some of that as best we can. My suggestion would be to talk to somebody that knows what they're doing. So somebody at driving mobility centre. You're more than welcome to get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to help anyone. Driving instructors, disability driving instructors website. So speak to John Rogers, Hayden Cook, although he's retired now, he's always there to help everyone on the disability. Was it driving instructors with and for?
Is that Hayden Jenkins?
Yeah. ADIs with and for disabilities.
That's the one. Facebook group, yes.
That's it, yeah. And Lee Pollard is another one. So he runs the course with John Rogers. So there's a few people out there. And so anybody that you know that has hand controls, give them a shout. So up in Scotland, Fiona McMeekan, she does driving assessor. She deals a lot of people that are deaf. Haven't really spoke too much about people that can't hear. So they're another entity, if you like, of people that need help, that anybody could help with somebody that can't hear. It's using hand signals while they're driving, agreeing with them what hand signal you're going to use. And then where it's side of the road, it could be if they can writing down the information, asking them the questions, not on paper. Visual aids, all great for them. Loads and loads of stuff to do.
So I'm going to follow on from this question from Stefan. So this is the second part. Specific advice would be best. Is it empathy or just experience that helps most?
Or got to have empathy. I think for anybody that training, you've got to have empathy, haven't you? It doesn't matter who they are, what medical situation they're in, whether they're 100% healthy, whether they've got dementia. You've got to have empathy for them. Experience does help. Because you need to know it goes back to the training, doesn't it, for the adaptations. If you're teaching somebody with adaptations, you need to have that experience on using them so you know what to do and how to get that person out of trouble if they need it. So definitely empathy and experience helps, but you can learn.
I think there's been some good messages here and certainly some places to send the listeners to start getting that knowledge and understanding of what's out there, how it's used, where the work is, and what they can do to help, even if you're not right at this moment in time thinking of moving into this line of work. Filling in the survey, giving your opinions right now, because I know we were speaking before we started recording, but this isn't a project that's a 3-week project and that's where it's going to go. This is looking for a long-term solution to what's currently going on at the moment.
Yeah, long term. So we're looking, I think in total we've got 9 months, I think it is, for this first part, the first phase. So if we get enough instructors that have, as I've said, filled in the questionnaires, then hopefully we'll get the funding to go on to the second phase, which is what is needed. We need that funding to get that second phase going, because that's when we can really start helping driving instructors as well as the end user.
Get onto it, get it filled in. But Penny, thank you so much for your time this evening. As always, an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And I look forward to seeing what comes of the survey, the answers, and what comes next.
So do I. Thank you very much for having me again, Josh. It's been
No
great
problem.
talking to
Thank you. So thank you to our guests today, Jackie and Penny, and thank you to the show's sponsors, Knowledgeably Instructor Training. Make sure that you head over to their website to check out their award-winning content, and that's available at www.adikit.co.uk. You can also check out Talking Send with Dr. Julia Malkin. This is a membership where you get access to over 60 videos helping you understand your neurodiverse learners. So these are short videos, around 10 minutes, just giving you an insight into the neurodiverse conditions, whether that's ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia. There's a huge amount of content there, and that just keeps growing. That's available on Patreon, but for more information, you can find it on Facebook at Talking Send with Dr. Julia Malkin, MBE. Thank you.